Hello, I'm Martin Warren and I shall be giving a short presentation on powers and roots. In this presentation I will cover squares, cubes, powers of 10, any power, square roots, cube roots and fourth roots, and powers in general. Any number can be raised to any other number. Powers can be whole numbers, they can be positive, they can be negative, they can be less than 1, using decimals, they can be fractions. And as we deal with powers of 10, very often they even have their own names. So 10 to the power 3, or 10 to the power 6, 10 to the power 9. These can be called kilo, mega or giga. And you may well have come across these when working with computers in terms of bytes and storage. A square is a number multiplied by itself. It is denoted by a superscript 2. 4 squared is equal to 4 times 4 equals 16. 16 squared is 16 times 16 equals 256. There's a button on your calculator that will calculate squares for you, or you could just write 5 times 5, 5 squared, and you get the answer 25. Cubes goes one stage further than a square in that it's a number multiplied by itself 3 times. It is denoted by a superscript 3. So 4 cubed is 4 times 4 times 4 equals 64. Most calculators have a button on it which calculates cubes, or again you could use multiplication. 2 times 2 times 2, 2 cubed is 8. Powers of 10 are used so often there's a dedicated button for them on your calculator. It's sometimes denoted as EXP for exponential, or sometimes represented by multiplication sign 10x. So whatever button you have, if you wish to raise power 10 to the power 3, you press your EXP button and enter 3, and it will give you the result 10 to the power 3 equals 1000. Very often we use it in conjunction with other numbers such as 2 times 10 to the power 3. So 2 EXP, or the times 10 button, raised to the power 3 will give you the answer 2000. A number can be raised to any other number, and usually your calculator has a button on there to allow you to do this. Certainly scientific calculators will allow this. It may look like what we have on the screen here, x with a little white box above it. So to find the fourth power of 5, we press 5, then we press the x to the any power button, then we press 4, and that will allow us to calculate 5 raised to the power 4, which in this case is equal to 625. If your calculator doesn't have that button, then you're going to have to work it out by multiplication. This just shows the relationship between a number being squared, in this case 4. 4 squared is 4 with a little superscript 2, which gives 16, and then we can take something known as the square root, which takes us back to 4. So the square root is the number that when multiplied by itself gives us 16. So 4 squared is 16, square root of 16 is 4. There's a relationship between the two terms. Square roots. So a square root is a number multiplied by itself gives another number. So the square root of 16, as we just saw, is 4, or in fact is 4 or minus 4, because 4 times 4 is 16, and minus 4 times minus 4 is also equal to plus 16. Your calculator will almost certainly have a square root button on it, particularly if it's a scientific calculator. And remember that there are always two results when you take the square root of a number, the positive one and a negative one. We tend to ignore the negative one. So the square root of 36, we say is 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Square root of 100 is 10. 10 times 10, or 10 squared, equals 100. Working out square roots, you really do need a calculator for all but the most simple values. Cube roots. Cube roots are very similar to square roots in that it's the number that's when multiplied 3 times gives us a certain number. We go in one direction, take the cube root, we go back to that original number. Most scientific calculators will have a cube root button. In this case, there will only be one answer, positive or negative. The cube root symbol is the tick with a little 3 written above it. We could have written a little 2 above the tick for the square root, but because square roots are so common, we drop the 2. So the cube root of 8 is 2, because 2 times 2 times 2, or 2 cubed, is equal to 8. The cube root of 64 is 4, because 4 cubed is 64. Cube root of 125 is 5, etc., etc. And very quickly you'll find you will need to use your calculator to calculate cube roots. If you've got a scientific calculator, you may well have a button that looks similar to the one that's shown on the screen to the right here. A square root sign with a couple of boxes, one outside and one in. This allows you to take the root of any number. So if you wish to find the fourth root of 625, we press 4 to start with to show we're taking the fourth root. We then press the any root button and enter 625, and then we just press the equal sign and we get the answer 5. You could take the square root twice. Square root of 625 and take the square root of the result. It'll give you the same answer. Powers in general. There are a number of rules to do with powers which I won't go into here, but any number can be raised to any other number. So consider 3 raised to the power 2. We have the base number, which in this case is 3, and then we have the index number or the power, which in this case is 2. So 3 raised to the power 2, the base is 3, and the index is 2. And we can extend this. We can have 2 raised to the power 5, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 32. We can have 3 raised to the power 4, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which equals 81. And we don't even have to use a whole number. We can use fractions and decimals and negative values as well. When your powers become more complex, it's always best to use a calculator, and a scientific calculator at that if you have one. Scientific calculators provide a variety of buttons. So in addition to the x squared button or the square root button, you very often have a button that allows you to raise any number to any other number. Looking at the slide in front of you, you see that you could have x to the power y, or conversely y to the power x. You could have x with a little white box shown above it, or even what's known as a caret, a little up arrow, that allows you to raise a number to any other number. So for instance, you could raise 3 to the power 2 by pressing 3, followed by one of those buttons, then 2, and it will give you 3 times 3, or 9. When you do more complicated sums, this button is extremely useful. So here, first example, we got 4 raised to a half, which is equivalent to taking the square root of 4, which equals 2. I've written a half, then I wrote 0.5, so 4 raised to 0.5, the decimal equivalent of a half. So again, we're just taking the square root of 4, which equals 2. Any number raised to 1 is itself, so 4 raised to 1 is just 4. The next result is a little bit odd. 4 raised to 0. Any number raised to 0 always equals 1. Now we can go negative. 4 to minus 1, that little minus sign means just put over 1. So 4 raised to minus 1 is 1 over 4, so a quarter. 4 raised to minus 2 is 1 over 4 squared. So the 4 goes beneath the 1 and it just becomes 1 over 4 squared. The power becomes positive, 1 over 16. 4 raised to minus a half, or minus 0.5, is 1 over the square root of 4, or a half. Try it out on your calculator and see if you get the same results. So in the short presentation, I have touched upon squares, cubes, common powers of 10, any powers, square roots, cube roots, fourth roots, and powers in general, and raising any number to any other number. It does help if you have a scientific calculator, because you find all the buttons you need will be on there somewhere. Thank you very much.